Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. I am the host who loves his toast, Joe Kuzma, and I am rejoined by the host who doesn't like toast but waffles are okay, Brian E. Roach. Brian, how in the heck do you make your waffles? Tell me they're in a toaster.
No, man, I got a waffle iron.
Oh, you got a waffle iron. Oh, I'm sorry. I got the low rent Eggos over here.
But if I had Eggos, I'd make them in a toaster.
I'm a second class citizen or whatever. I'm eating like a pilgrim. How you been, man?
And waffles aren't just okay. Waffles rock, man.
Oh, yeah, waffle. My kid loves the waffles, too. They make, like, Mickey Mouse waffles, chocolate chip waffles. Actually, I took the best of both worlds. The other day, she wanted for breakfast, I diced up some bananas. I made the Mickey Mouse waffles in the toaster. And then cut them up because, you know, she's still a little one, so she needs things kind of like you. Like, you need, you know, you're gumming at food now. Or what are you, like 80 years old? And then I didn't stop with the insults this time. I just keep them going.
You didn't.
Now you're here. But yeah, you could defend yourself, of course.
I'm not 80 and I don't gum my food.
But you did see Terry Bradshaw play.
I did.
See? So you're older than myself, and, you know, Terry just doesn't want to admit her real age. But we had some fun with you while you were gone, and now, you know, the cat's away, the mice will play. But anyway, I put some chocolate syrup, you know, the Hershey syrup, and whipped cream and bananas on the waffles, and, you know, they were the bee's knees. And you know what? Your kid, you know, she was running around. I think she ran through a wall like the Kool-Aid man. So so much sugar and everything else got her all hyped up. I'm hyped up. Well, not so much, man. I know you're not a hockey guy, but since we last had the chance to talk, Penguins exit from the playoffs, and people were already complaining it was Mike Tomlin's fault because he showed up and watched the game for Game 6 in Pittsburgh, and they lost.
I thought they would be complaining that Ben showed up and watched the game.
Well, you know, that they'd complain about everybody except for Villanueva, who had, you know, he was for some reason shirtless and dumping beers on himself. I don't know. That guy looked like the Mountain off of Game of Thrones. It's crazy.
I saw that clip. Yes,
crazy. So, yeah, you know what? You can't expect all of it. Now, if you got people that are littered between the areas like where I live, they're still following basketball with the Cleveland Cavs, and they're looking to maybe be in the NBA Finals again. I don't even know. LeBron James has been in like every NBA Finals, at least in the Finals, not won every championship, but he's been in every one of them for like a decade. But over the same period of time, everyone complains about everything the Steelers do, and they don't realize that, you know, these mega dynasties don't exist in the same way in football. And one of the complaints, or one of the things I see almost repetitively since the NFL draft, is that the Steelers failed to do anything to address their defense. Sometimes it's not anything, but that's the way some people are reacting. Anything. They did not address their defense. We're here today to say that is false. Fake news, right?
Yeah, that's definitely fake news. It would be accurate to say they didn't do what you thought they would, but it's inaccurate to say they didn't do anything, because they absolutely did.
Yes, they did. In fact, you know what? I think the first thing I want to mention on the topic is to just take a little peek back into the 2017 season. I thought the defense was doing pretty darn good in certain spells of this year. I mean, the Browns game at the beginning was tight. We always say it's an extension of the preseason. They only gave up 9 points to the Vikings. You had the ugly game at Chicago. They go into Baltimore and only give up 9 there. I mean, the Ravens' offense was miserable. You had the Jacksonville game by 30 points. Not all that was on the defense. 14 of that, the pick sixes with Ben, and then that long run at the end when they were just like, this is all done. But the Chiefs, remember, the Chiefs were undefeated. They held them to 13 in their own house. They held the Bengals to 14. They went on the road again. They're not supposed to be a good road team, but they won a lot of road games last year, you know.
Yeah.
The Lions, 15 points. Now, The Colts 17, maybe a little more surprising after a bye week and in Indianapolis. The Titans, that was the blowout. That was the 40-17. Then you get Brett Hundley come in with the Green Bay Packers laid 28, and you had to win with I almost said Sean Sweesham. Shame on me. Chris Boswell's leg or foot, and then Shazier gets hurt in the Bengals game. That was the 23-20. Also the field goal heroics again, just like Oprah. You get field goal, you get a field goal, you get a field goal. When they beat the Ravens at home, 39-38, like somehow the Ravens scored as many points in one game as they did the entire season right there. But from that point forward, I think the one thing is the Steelers led the league in sacks. And it was a franchise record for sacks. And you think about all these great Steelers defenses over all the years that they've been in existence. That's quite a statement. Another thing I wanted to point out too is, a lot of people were talking about, well, they couldn't stop the run, or they couldn't do this, or, well, once Shazier was out of there, I thought they were doing pretty darn good. I was waiting for Joe Hayden's return because he got hurt too, as we know, and you had to deal with, Cody Sensabaugh back there before they got Cam Sutton off the IR. That was pretty painful as well. So 2 injuries to the defense at that point to 2 starters. That's going to probably hamper any NFL team at that point. And I think that's very important to bring up when you're getting towards the end of the season, especially when you're like, you're throwing shots at saying, well, the Cleveland Browns did this in week 17, or look at what Jacksonville did in the playoffs. I don't think this year's defense is going to look like that one, but like you said, the changes they made, not necessarily the ones we may have expected.
Absolutely not. And look, there's no question that once Shazier went down, the defense had its problems, mostly due to communication. And it impacted both the pass and the run. Guys were out of position left and right. They gave up a lot of big plays that they probably shouldn't have. Everybody went into the offseason with the idea in their head, they're going to have to replace Ryan Shazier, because he's not going to be back for 2018 if he manages to come back at all. We know for sure he's not coming back for 2018, having been placed on unable to perform. But just because we think they need to replace Ryan Shazier doesn't mean that's the avenue they're going to go, because the bottom line is it's not like there are Ryan Shaziers growing on trees. In this particular draft, there's no Ryan Shazier in this draft, and the closest they were going to come was the top 3 inside linebackers, which was Edmonds and Evans and Van Der Esch.
Yep.
And those guys were gone. I mean, they were gone. They tried to move up for Rashaan Evans. They made the phone calls. They made the effort. They couldn't get it done. They simply didn't have the draft capital they needed to do it. And that's not through any fault of their own. It's just the way it works out. It shows you how in demand those positions are. I think what they may have done, however, is reorient the way they want to play defense, because Terrell Edmonds is a Swiss Army knife.
That's the word I use too. Yeah. And Jalen Samuels.
Yeah. All over the place. He can play, a linebacker position if they need him to in some circumstances. He can play corner. He can play, free or strong safety. He can play pretty much wherever they want him to play. We've talked about that on previous podcasts. He's this year's version of Jabril Peppers, just a little bigger and stronger.
And not from Michigan.
And not from that place. Yeah, not from that school up north. And then you've got, Marcus Allen, and Marcus Allen is more of a throwback kind of strong safety, box safety. But again, it gives them this flexibility with adding Burnett, adding Beret. I can't say his name. Me in pronunciation.
I think
Burry, and then these 2 new guys. I think that it's going to be a different defense than the one we expect. And the problem is that's how everybody's addressing this issue. The reason they didn't address the defense is because we expected it to look like this, and you didn't get the guys you need for it to look like this. Well, that's true. They didn't. But I don't think it's going to look like we're used to it seeing. We won't know that for sure until it turns out, it's time to play football. But I think you've got reason to be very excited for the Steelers defense and what it could conceivably do and consist of, and what the kind of packages they can play and the things that they're going to be able to do, coverages and run defenses that are going to be different than what we're used to, I think.
You jogged my memory on one thing specifically, was not only Ryan Shazier out, Tyler Matakevich, who is his backup, listed directly as his backup, not LJ Fort. He's the guy that's prepared to come in and adjust the defense as well. He got hurt around the very same time, if not the same game, or he wasn't available in that game or something to that effect. So they not only lost, and I equated it to to the offensive side of the ball when I wrote the article. Most people cringe except for me, cringe when Landry Jones is going to step in for Ben Roethlisberger. Do you not have the same feeling when Tyler Matakevich is going to step in for somebody like Ryan Shazier? Because that is
even worse.
Yeah, the quarterback.
Even worse.
The quarterback of the defense. Well, you take Matakevich out of there, and you don't have a Josh Dobbs. There's not a third guy like a Josh Dobbs that's taking any type of reps. You have to go pull him off the street, off of his couch, and his name's Sean Spence, and he moves around like I'm the old man myself trying to get up off the couch and move around at night when my back's stiff and sore. He was, without a doubt, one of the biggest weaknesses was that, because they tried to move Arthur Moats from the outside inside, and we speculated whether or not that would work, and it was like, hey, you know what? We said Moats has played the inside before this, and no, that was worse than playing Spence there. No offense to Arthur, I'm sure he felt like a fish out of water as well. The experiment, what are you going to do? It's like December, let me see, the actual date was December 4th when Ryan Shazier got hurt in that game. What are you going to do at this point? There aren't guys just sitting around that you could just grab that are you got to hope that they're even, still staying in shape and waiting for their agent to get a phone call to join an NFL roster, like a Stephen Ridley, for example, who was, a terrific surprise that late of an addition in the season too. It's just you get rid of the guys who are calling the plays. Now, Vince Williams has had experience in filling in for Ryan Shazier in the past, back when, the year before when Timmons was still in the starting lineup and on the roster. But it's just like, hey, you know what? He hasn't done that in a while, and you have Will Gay. And here's the other thing. You have Will Gay directing traffic, because guess what? Vince Williams comes off the field a lot of times in those obvious third down passing situations, and it was just eating them up. Now, I've mentioned a lot of names so far already, and you've mentioned some too, because you've mentioned 4 safeties so far that are different from the previous season, okay? So what was one of the main complaints that everyone had besides, stopping the run or whatever this stuff that happened? I don't think it was as big a problem. Tackling's a problem in the NFL, period. I'm sorry they're not allowed the type of contact that they used to be allowed to do in practice, et cetera, wear pads or what. The tackling can be atrocious. You could look at any of the 32 teams and see that on any given Sunday at certain points. That's why it appears to me the Steelers are always trying to find guys that are sure tacklers now out of college, so they're just naturally there. I don't know how much practice you could actually get in on that. But 4 safeties, right? One of the guys that everybody complained about is gone. Mike Mitchell. Everybody complained about him. Oh, well, you know what? He doesn't stop anything. He gets burnt. He gets there. Gone. Addressed. Yes or no? Yes. Addressed.
Yes.
Robert Golden, do we think he was a suitable maybe backup? He is definitely a special teams guy. Suitable backup to come in, start, do whatever? Not really.
No.
Addressed? Yes.
Yes.
Goodbye. Backup-wise, depth. J.J. Wilcox. See you later. Gone as well. Now, Jordan Dangerfield was hurt last year. He's going to be coming to camp too. So you got to throw him in the mix because he wasn't part of the mix in 2017. You got Marcus Allen in the 5th round. You got Terrell Edmonds, who could be wherever, and then they signed Morgan Burnett as well. Nat Burhey, the missile. Oh, I love saying the missile. He's more of a golden special teams type guy, but he could be a depth guy too. I don't know that he sees the field too much. It's probably why they went after Allen and Edmonds in the draft. They addressed defense. Now, we didn't even mention a guy that's probably going to be playing in Ryan Shazier's spot this year, and we don't know how much he will, but he's certainly an upgrade over Sean Spence. Most definitely, more than likely, an upgrade, at least in athleticism, to Tyler Matakevich. Matakevich gets by because he's pretty good football player. He's got the smarts, he's got the football IQ, and he's usually a pretty solid tackler. He seems like he's a little small sometimes. It all depends. I mean, like I said, the other guys on the other side of the field, they get paid to play football too. But John Bostic comes over, starting experience over with the Indianapolis Colts last season. He could be a stopgap because you mentioned the three guys. And I'm getting long-winded myself. I'll let you talk here in a sec, Pry. But you mentioned the three guys in the draft. The top three guys. You and I discussed it, until we were blue in the face before the draft. There was Terrell Edmunds' brother, Tremaine. He was the top of the class. The Buffalo Bills moved up from 22 to, I believe, 16 to make sure they got him. Leighton Vander Esch goes, I think, 2 picks later, 18 to the Dallas Cowboys. And then the Tennessee Titans also move up, I think, 4 spots, 26 to 22, I believe, in order to grab Rashaan Evans. 2 of the 3 guys, these teams moved up in order to get them. What else are you going to do there? You're not just going to go and grab. Most of the guys that went second and third round, we're projecting them to maybe be outside linebackers, guys who played with their hand in the dirt. They would have to make a Lawrence Timmons type conversion in order to come around. Now, would you rather have a conversion project or a developmental guy that's potentially going to end up starting, or would you rather have someone with the versatility of Terrell Edmunds or the exciting type of splash plays that maybe James Washington could be capable of? I don't know what they were supposed to do in the draft, but I think they did address the defense.
They absolutely did. And, the other thing to point out to everybody, it's not just that they were – there weren't guys there. The guys that people have brought up, guys like Malik Jefferson and Shaquem Griffin, they're not inside linebackers. I mean, they're just not, and they're not suited to that position. Yes, somebody like Josie Jewell who went, higher than expected, again, because of need to some other teams, isn't there for them to pick on. And again, that's a Tyler Matakevich type linebacker. Okay, he's better probably than Tyler is. A little more athletic, a little bigger, a little stronger, but it's the same type of linebacker. He's not going to replace Ryan Shazier.
Wait a minute.
He's easily going to replace Sean Spence.
Anybody. I'm looking at my cat. My cat kind of just gave me a look right now.
Yes. Well, it's not my fault that you have that evil creature in your house that wants to kill you.
Always plotting, and always runs under my feet for some reason. I think it's like, some type of plot. I do think. I'm looking back at him the same way now. Who can play this game?
That's what cats are always thinking. How can I kill you? But that's beside the point. Now, so there were linebackers around, but there weren't linebackers that made sense, and that's the same. The same thing is true when we talked about the Mason Rudolph pick, and when you talk about the James Washington pick as well. What else was the best value there? James Washington makes a lot of sense because they traded Martavis Bryant away. He gives them another weapon. They needed somebody to stretch the field. He's a guy who can stretch the field. Mason Rudolph, despite, and I know you guys talked about this on the last podcast, but despite all the drama, and as much as I hate to give Ian Rappaport any credit for anything, the comments he made about the fact that most capable, high-level starting quarterbacks would be thinking the same thing that Ben is saying. The only difference is that they don't say it. But Ben is Ben. He says what's on his mind. So fine, and he's right. I don't know that Mason Rudolph helps them win this year. He may help them win later on, but when you get down to it, a guy that you have a first-round grade on that you can get in the third is a guy you probably can't pass up on. So that they get the value that they need, because again, there's nothing else there. Who do you want them to take? Another safety? There isn't anybody there that makes sense. So as you move down and down that, it's not a question of it's not fair to say they didn't address the defense. They clearly did. What we don't know is if they effectively address the defense. And we won't know that until the season starts. But they obviously have a plan. And I think that plan is just something that we aren't all going to be able to just immediately go, oh, I know exactly what they're going to do. It's going to be different than what we're used to, I think.
Well, I mean, aside from losing somebody like Ryan Shazier, I looked around the roster and I was thinking this pre-draft. I mean, most people were saying inside linebacker, safety. There were some that wanted tight end or defensive line, and I didn't really see a whole lot of holes. I don't see a whole lot of openings on the 2018 Steelers roster, where I was even questioning, I'm like, of the guys that were drafted, I'm like, do all of them make the roster? And, you know, they all got a pretty solid shot, every single one of them. Even a core of four, I said, it was like a maybe, but as a third rounder, I think he has to be on the roster. Chris Hubbard left, so that leaves a vacancy there. You know, your tight ends are you're too deep there. You got a guy like McDonald who didn't have a camp last year. You have Joe Hayden who didn't have a camp with the Steelers last year. This stuff, it's going to help improve this team. When they got rid of Bryant, that left like one opening. And you still don't know what's going on with Le'Veon Bell. You could have a new starter at running back. That would be maybe two new starters on the offensive side of the ball. The offensive line all comes back. The offensive linemen play a significantly long time in the NFL usually. Some quarterbacks do. Ben will be there. Antonio Brown is entrenched. Juju's entrenched. So you look on the defensive side of the ball. Does anyone think, like, you know, that how many guys do you think you're going to get rid of there? You're going to get rid of Cam Hayward or Stephon Tuitt? I don't think so. Bud Dupree, TJ Watt. I didn't see any improvements in the draft or free agency. Not to say, I think both of those guys are pretty much on par as the same type of player. I think the secondary, I think the cornerbacks are loaded personally. Like I said, Joe Hayden. Artie Burns was supposed to be a corner one. And if that kind of scares you or, you know, makes you like, you know, the hair on the back of your neck stand up, me too. I think, Brian, I think you feel the same way too, but you put him as a corner too, totally good. I'm good with that. I'm more than good with that. And
I'm actually good with him eventually being a corner one. Remember, he's 23.
Oh yeah, his ceiling is high. He has a very high ceiling. I think we've seen his floor already.
Yeah,
and that doesn't look so bad when you see somebody like Sensabaugh, who, you know, he's still on the roster, but I don't know for how much longer. You've got Mike Hilton has shown us what he can do. You have somebody that's almost like Mike Hilton, could be a similar style player. They could throw another one out there with Cam Sutton, who missed half a year with injured reserve. I hear an evil animal in the background. That would be the enemy of no, that's man's best friend. That's not.
This is man's best friend. That's my dog, and my dog hates your cat.
I can sense that already. No, I'm a big animal lover, but yeah, speaking of these animals, this isn't Will Gay, you know, in this spot now, trying to move him around, or Sean Davis trying to fit into a nickel corner role, and this may help Davis too with having Morgan Burnett, and we still don't know where their defined roles are going to be combined with Terrell Edmonds. That's all pretty interesting. The only question mark is, you know, who's next to Vince Williams. And that's if you're even playing a 3-4 and you have two inside linebackers on the field. Because I haven't even mentioned Javon Hargrave. You're returning, depending on the scheme, depending on the formation, you're returning a minimum of 9 starters on the defense this year, maybe 10 if you're playing like a nickel and you're really only throwing Burnett out there as the new guy, depending on who plays that inside linebacker role. We'll say is Vince Williams. If it's not, it's Bostic. It's 2 new starters. Returning 9 starters in the NFL from the previous year, I say that's solid. That's a very good foundation from which to work with.
It is. And remember, you know, last year when we got to the 53-man defense, the inside linebackers were Shazier Williams, L.J. Fort, and Tyler Matakevich. Now, that means they kept 4 on the 53. It's possible that they may look at somebody like, you know, Terrell Edmonds as a guy who fits into that room in the sense that they only keep 3 inside linebackers on the 53 because they've got guys that they're going to play so much sub package with that they don't need the extra body. It's possible. We'll just have to wait and see how the 53-man roster gets comprised. But you're absolutely right. There's depth in the corners. There's depth on the line. Tyson Alualu was fantastic last year. A great upgrade over some of the guys that have a name similar to Cam Hayward's, but are not nearly as good as Cam Hayward.
Cam Thomas.
Cam Thomas. LT Walton looked good. McCullers is probably, McCullers is McCullers. I don't know. This is his last shot. with Big Dan, if he even makes it to the roster.
Special teams.
He is what he is. If somebody can light a fire under this kid and get him to play angry the way Mean Joe Green wants him to play, could see a different player, but it certainly doesn't seem likely at this point. It's a defense that I think is going to frustrate us early on as they get used to what they're going to do. Because again, I think it's very likely that the first couple of games they're still sorting out how they're changing things. But I think that this is a defense that is going to be better overall than it was last year.
Just on paper, I mean, it would have to take something significant for them to not be. And we've already seen Keith Butler kind of shaping and molding things the way he wanted. He couldn't run the same. You couldn't run the same defense with Sean Spence out there. You probably couldn't do it with Tyler Matakevich. No. You can't do it with just Vince Williams playing in Shazier's spot. It's not possible. And I think that's one thing that a lot of folks aren't realizing is this isn't the old steel curtain, from the 70s. This isn't the Blitzburg defenses like Bill Cowher had. The whole 3-4 thing where you put Casey Hampton in the middle and you try and use him to eat up 2 guys, 3 guys if you can, Aaron Smith, Chemo, those type of guys, that's over with. Almost. Yep. I remember when it was a novelty, really, and I could even remember what was his name with the Rams? Azahir Hakeem, was that his name? I think so. He was the slot receiver, and I remember thinking it's like slot receiver. That's such a neat little gimmick they got going on with this offense. Everybody has 3 receivers now. Everybody has a slot receiver and an Azahir Hakeem type guy out there. So I mean, he got a huge contract somewhere too after those, the Super Bowl and the Greatest Show on Turf thing.
Absolutely,
he got a huge contract with I think it was the Detroit Lions. But I remember the Steelers didn't really have anything like that. You had special packages, but they were the same thing on offense. You don't go and just pound the I formation with a fullback or Jerome Bettis back there or anything like that, or Bam Morris or any of these guys. Everything has evolved, and because it has evolved on one side of the ball, it has to evolve on the other. And it dare I say, it's almost like it has to be the Cincinnati Bengals style almost, where you just keep loading up on corners, and loading up on corners. The same thing. Bill Belichick's had that figured out too. He usually has no shortage of cornerbacks unless he just wants to sit a guy in the Super Bowl because he doesn't want to win the game. But aside from that, he always seems to make sure that they made sure they went out and got Aqib Talib that one year to try and get themselves. Or no, I'm sorry, was it Talib? No,
no,
it was Darrelle Revis.
Darrelle Revis.
I'm sorry. Denver did the same thing by getting Talib, I should say. But yeah, Darrelle Revis, they rented him for a year so they could try and shut down one side of the field. And I think the Steelers have figured some of that out now. They figured out that you can't just trust drafting and developing guys. They went out and made sure they got Joe Hayden. They secured him, and that he's here for a few years. And they still got Burns that's kind of growing there. I know it goes against what I just said, but hey, that's corner 2. We got the corner 1 maybe. Not everyone's going to find a guy in the middle of the draft. It's like Richard Sherman, and I'm not quite sure that Richard Sherman's still Richard Sherman either. There's a finite time period for corners, just like the wide receivers or running backs. These guys don't get to play forever, so there's always going to be a large turnaround or a large turnover with those type of positions. I think they did a real solid with T.J. Watt last year. And I mean, I don't know that they could just dump 3-4 picks on the defense again, because I don't see 3 or 4 open spots where people are going to get playing time. It was very unique to see 3 rookie starters a couple of years ago when it was Artie Burns and Sean Davis and Javon Hargrave. They had guys that didn't live up to, I don't know what kind of expectations we all had. Like, what was it, a 4th-round pick for Shamarko Thomas? But come on, no one's replacing Troy Polamalu. I don't think that Mike Mitchell necessarily worked out the way that they had anticipated, or Mike Mitchell just got caught in the middle of this type of transition with the way defenses are run now, because it caught up to Ryan Clark too. I don't see where, when you're talking about, and we've coined this phrase several times now, with the win now versus win later, I'm kind of okay with the win later too, because you're starting to now put some things in the reserves for down the road when some guys start to maybe retire or no longer up to snuff, so to speak, and try and keep that standard as the standard. So be that Terrell Edmonds or James Washington, who these guys should have 4-year contracts, maybe a 5th-year option for Edmonds. Mason Rudolph. Okorafor is in the same mold. I mean, quite frankly, how much longer does Marcus Gilbert play in the NFL? Or Alejandro, what if he surpasses Alejandro Villanueva? And they've already got, B.J. Finney kind of sitting there waiting to see maybe in a year what happens with Ramon Foster, or Marquise Pouncey says he's going to hang it up when Ben hangs it up. So you've got all of these different – they have a lot of options. They have people in reserve for if Le'Veon Bell's not there. And I think that's what they more or less did with the defense, because I want to frame it this way. If they were capable of getting Tremaine Edmonds or Rashaan Evans or Leighton Vander Esch in the draft, well, now what do you do in 2019? Let's say Ryan Shazier makes some miraculous comeback, which watching him during the draft, it pains me to say it. I hate to say it, but everybody's thinking it. Much in the same way when Ben Roethlisberger made some comments, it was a lot of stuff that was on people's mind anyway. Ryan Shazier was struggling. It was great to see him walk, but he doesn't look like a guy that can, do it with very little help, or you know what I mean, or run, or do any sort of strenuous athletic activity at this point in time. Should he improve and be able to play again in 2019? Can he also be the player that he used to be? So there's a lot of question marks there, but say he does return like that. You got Vince Williams that's in his final contract season right now too, and maybe he gets extended. We don't know. I don't want to kick that ball too far because they don't talk about this stuff till around training camp. But what do you do with the linebackers if you go out and you get one of these top guys? You're basically, shoving Ryan Shazier. So you're just closing the door on him completely, or on Vince Williams or whatever. And now is this, to coin this phrase that's being thrown around for a lot of things now, is it wasting a draft pick on a guy because now you're going to have him go to the bench maybe? I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that. And maybe that's kind of where they were waiting and seeing too, with just taking Bostic and then just, let's beef up the secondary.
Well, I think at least in this draft, as we've said, a lot of that is predicated on who they could get. As we said, they tried to get Rashaan Evans. It just didn't work. So I think that it's hard to say this, and it's hard for any of us to think it, but, Ryan Shazier did not look like a player who was going to come back to the field when we saw him walk. It's fantastic, and we've said repeatedly, all we really want for this guy is to have a normal life. You don't want to say never to anything. The guy has already gone above and beyond, I think, what expectations would be. But this pains me more than most things I'm going to say. I have to give Zach Adonia some credit because he did a write-up on an undrafted free agent inside linebacker.
Oh yes, how can I forget?
That could be a sleeper here. The Steelers have a history of finding some guys as undrafted free agents. B.J. Finney, James Harrison, the list can go actually quite long.
Villanueva, Ramon
Donnie
Foster,
Shell,
Rosie
Donnie Shell, who should be in the freaking Hall of Fame. They have that kind of ability at times. And while, the biggest knock against Matthew Thomas was whether he really wants to play the game. Well, when you're an undrafted free agent, we're going to find out if you really want to play the game. And if he really wants to play this game, there is an open avenue for this guy. He's a freak athletically. So Zach did a great piece on the site about him. And Zach, don't let this go to your head. You're still, you're still a loser, but you're a good loser. You're not really a loser. I love you.
I appreciate the shout out. Just the mention of his name usually tickles his fancy.
So it's worth reading. I think people should give it a shot. But again, help can come from unknown places. So if they can get some guys to perform a little better than we anticipate, if they do the things that I think they're planning on doing to rework the defense a little bit, once they get all of their ducks in a row, this could be a very good defense.
Yeah, Matthew Thomas is interesting because there's so many things surrounding him. If you don't know the story, just check out Zach's article. I think that was from just before the weekend. And, he had all kinds of things happen. He had his mother died. He became academically ineligible. I think he may have failed a drug test in the middle of some of that too. And team rules. And this guy's experienced enough adversity in his life already and already come from all of that and to be should be entering a training camp, barring anything else. This is one of those things that I don't think the Steelers would be bringing him onto the roster right now if they didn't see or feel a specific way. I don't know. It's very tough to say anything about any of that because I haven't walked a mile in that guy's shoes. But as you said, he offers a tremendous upside if he were to work out. There's a lot of undrafted guys. I mean, we just named a handful of them there. Willie Parker was another one. You just never know. The other thing we're kind of discounting a little bit is the coaching changes. A lot of people were not happy with certain things with the defense. The secondary. They have a new secondary coach. And then you have John Mitchell, the assistant coach / D-line coach, who'd been in the NFL like practically the whole Super Bowl era. And he's stepped aside now for Carl Dunbar, who was, creating all of these first-round prospects down in Alabama, which got to get you kind of excited too. I'm sorry, I'm looking for Tom Bradley is the guy who took over for the defensive backs from Carnell Lake. And let me see, he comes over from, I was trying to figure out where he just was, DC at. Yeah, UCLA. And then he was also the interim head coach at Penn State at one point. So it's intriguing. It's really intriguing to see. This is going to be different, maybe not only from the personnel standpoint, but also maybe from a coaching aspect with the positional coaches. You still got Keith Butler at the helm. I still think Keith Butler was trying to transition from some of the things that he wanted to do versus what Dick LeBeau had done in the past. And, that takes time in order to get your guys in there the way that you want. I think he's got enough of his guys now to maybe mold this. I think we saw it last year. I think we saw it with the 56 sacks that they had. Yep. I mean, I'm not going to say they're going to go and do 56 sacks again, but they only lost 3 games. And, some of that's on offense. You got to score points on offense. The defense, they did their job at a lot of times. There's times where they didn't. You're going to have that. That's just the way the cookie crumbles when it comes to this sort of thing. Barring any bad setback, I have to believe if Ryan Shazier doesn't get hurt last season, that Jacksonville game does not go anything like it does in the postseason. And also don't forget, Antonio Brown was hurt towards the end of the year. He was having an MVP season. So injuries are a part of football. You got to have some depth on the roster. They say the standard's the standard. It can't always be the standard, but I think they've insulated themselves against some of these potential issues given the players that they've added to the roster this year. And I think it should be very exciting because, 13-3 and leading the league in sacks is nothing to sneeze at. And if you weren't happy with that defense, well, I think you agree with me. I think it's going to be a better defense this year just based on the moves that they've made.
Yeah, and as I said, though, I want to caution people. I don't think it's going to come out of the gate that way. I think
it never does.
There's too many moving pieces. Forget the fact that they always start slow. It's normally the offense that causes problems on the beginning of the season. But there's a lot of changes that I think they're going to be implemented in this defense, and as those changes start to settle in, it'll get better. But initially, it could be a little disorganized. But at the same time, you've got guys like Joe Hayden who get to be here for a full camp, and the rest of the guys who are going to be around, Tyson Alualu in his second year, and TJ Watt in his second year, Bud Dupree being given, the assurance that his fifth-year option is there if he takes it. You know what I mean? They can still pull it back on him. But if he does what he needs to do, then it's there for him. So there's a minor payday sitting in front of Bud Dupree right now. I hate to call $8-something million a minor payday, but be that what it is, it's there, but he has to go get it because if he doesn't perform, they're going to pull it.
$8 million is nothing if you're a quarterback or Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, and let's remember this. This is a team that beat the damn Patriots last year because Jesse caught it.
That's right. That's right. Two games. Seriously, and overtime with the Bears, all on a blocked field goal snafu thing. They gave the Chicago an extra field goal with like no time on the clock or what. Totally botched, holy roller every other thing. That was just such a mess. And like I said, I don't know the officiating crew had ever seen that or will ever see anything like that again. So I have to give them a pass because there were just so many rules at that point that they had to see what was overlapping what. They should have just went in the locker room, came back out, and played an extra down if that be the case. If you know what I mean. It's not like they started over with the third quarter necessarily. So I don't know that they could do that, but in theory, I think, man, I just remember how long that took. But yes, Jesse caught it. I will never back off of that statement. I'm still sick to my stomach over it. I like what I see. I like the moves that they made. So by all means, don't say that they haven't addressed the defense. I think they addressed it. They addressed what needed to be addressed specifically in the secondary, and whatever their plans are going forward without Ryan Shazier, they have something mapped out, and that's what they were working toward. Whether or not they could have got somebody in the draft, they tried to move up, as you mentioned. The other guys weren't available there. They weren't comfortable with it. They decided to work on some other aspects. You know what I mean? They insulated themselves from having to worry about replacing Martavis Bryant in another year and starting over fresh. They didn't have a whole bunch. They don't have a whole bunch of guys that were wide receivers under contract past this season. So we'll be talking about some of that stuff going forward too. But should be very interesting. I'm excited. I can't wait for it. The only other thing I got to ask you, Brian, since you did not get to join myself and Miss Terry Fletcher on the last show, was not only did you enjoy our shout-outs, how did you take Ben's comments? Did he say anything that really kind of seemed uncharacteristic or surprised you, or was it just, were you more surprised that people kind of blew up over it?
Look, Ben is Ben, right?
Exactly.
Ben is going to say what is on his mind. He doesn't have a filter. He's not Peyton Manning. He's not Tom Brady. He's not the polished guy who's going to always say the trite comments. The problem is he doesn't have a Kevin Costner working with him like, Nuke Lelouch, telling him to work on his interview skills and his quotes. And he's gotten to, he's 14-year vet or whatever at this point. He's not going to take those things into account now. Ben's going to say what Ben's going to say. If it's on his mind, he's going to say it. Yeah. And, would it be nice if there was some way to have him go, some little switch that would be in his ear that goes, don't say that right now. It'll be dramatic. It's going to cause people to lose their mind. It would be nice. But, when you think about it, like I said, he's not saying anything that almost any other competitive quarterback wouldn't feel. They want to win now. And the bottom line is, unless Ben gets hurt and unless Mason Rudolph is a prodigy, Scott, that
inside joke.
Yep. But unless he's a prodigy that, needs that somehow this year surpasses Landry Jones and becomes the number 2. And all you people who said at the beginning of the season he'll be number 2, I'm sorry, you're wrong. He won't be. But if that were to happen, all right, then maybe if Ben gets hurt, he could help them win now. But he's not. None of that's probably going to happen. Let's keep our fingers crossed, knock on wood, that he's not going to get hurt, because ideally, we don't want Mason Rudolph to help us win now. Mm-hmm. Maybe one of the ways he can help us win now is by annoying Ben so that Ben plays even better than he did before.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I will say this about your shout-outs. I will say this. The name Joe
Don't go there. He's looking up definitions of names, and it's like I'm a sissy
average
girl or something. Oh,
it's ordinary, not unique. It's the perfect description for Joe Flacco.
And he says Joe Kuzma as well. And then he sends me a picture of Joe Flacco to further illustrate how my name's origin or its history is relevant in the present day, which, I can't disagree. Joe Flacco is not elite. Those words will never come out of my mouth. In fact, we're going to be talking about that maybe in an upcoming episode. All these new quarterbacks in the AFC North and just what might be going on there in Baltimore. But we'll save that for another time. Brian, I know you're losing your voice over there, man. These allergies are killer, but it's good to have you back.
It's good to be back.
So, on that note, no Ben Roethlisberger filter. It's A-OK. And by the way, we were mentioning how Tom Brady was just pleading the fifth or whatever, too. So it's going on. It's going on everywhere. It's drama. These are the guys who make the big bucks. You're not going to hear anything out of Brian Hoyer anytime soon. The only guy that was really a backup that ever caused a lot of noise was Tim Tebow. And, he's not around anymore either. So we shall see going forward. So I guess until next time, keep the comments coming. I guess, a little bit of interesting things going on in the comments section, but we love all of you, and there's always some friendly debate going on. We'll play nice as well. Until next time, my name's Joe. His name's Brian. Be safe, be good. We'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.